Well, thank you so much for doing this. I'm obviously really excited for the opportunity to, sit down with you today. Just had the chance briefly to see the offices and the compound, and it's quite impressive. And I think it's worth starting just with how far, you've come, and you go back to, your younger days when you were a young boy living right around here. How would you describe the area that you grew up in?
See, this was dairy farm and tobacco farm country. And I was born in this house right up here. And my dad started racing in the reaper shed right here behind. And then just over the years, we built a compound with all the racing stuff around it. But we were just country people. I just go to school. I played football, baseball, basketball. I come home, work on a race car, and other guys go home, milk cows, or prime tobacco, or whatever it was. So, and we didn't think anything about it. It was just life, and we just lived it from there.
What do you think your parents most taught you about work ethic early on?
If you didn't work, you didn't eat. That's for sure. I don't know that they ever taught you anything. You followed their program. When you got up in the morning and everybody went to the field, and you went with them, or Daddy worked on the race car. We went and worked on the race car. We went to school. We just, as far as we was concerned, and still concerned, we're just average people. It's other people that's different.
How was tobacco farming early on?
Well, that was a lot of work. People look at tobacco deal and don't realize that it's a 12-month operation. By the time, in the spring, you got to start the tobacco bed, and you raise them up till they get so big, then you got to go plow the field and put them in the field, and then once they grow up, you got to sucker them and keep the worms off of them and keep them hoed and all that stuff, and then you go in the field and you prime it all, and then you tie it all up and put it in the barn, spend all night. That's before they had gas and stuff, so you spent the night at the tobacco barn keeping the fire going so that they could dry out the tobacco. And then when you got that done, you took it to the pack house and separated it all, and then you take it to Greensboro or Winston or somewhere to the backer sale and hope you got a good price out of it. And then it was all over to do again. So it wasn't an easy job by any means.
When did you first learn about electricity and running water?
I was probably like 12 or 13 before we had electricity. And we had to have electricity before we could have running water. And I remember our first running water was just put a pump in the well, and we just had cold water in the house. But it was great because we'd never had anything like that. Then I was probably 13 or 14, and we moved back to this house, and my dad put in a bathroom. Man, we thought we died and gone to heaven. We had a bathroom. But in the meantime, I was like 11 or 12 years old when my dad first started racing. And all of a sudden, we started traveling to Pennsylvania and Tennessee and Ohio. And we've seen people have running water and, had cement driveways and all that stuff. We grew up and it was just dirt and no grass in the yard or nothing.
That was all foreign to you.
Yeah, when we went out, it was a real world out there. And, it's like everything else. As we grew up and we got the conveniences, then you can't go backwards. Like I say, we used a pot in the bedroom and went out in the woods to use the bathroom when we was up till we was 10 or 12 years old, and didn't think anything about it because the neighbors, everybody was doing the same thing.
When you didn't have the conveniences, looking back on that period of your life, what do you think you most took away from it, and how do you think it shaped you?
And what I took away was, in the future, was look how lucky we are that we're going in the right direction. You look back and it makes you appreciate it. If you was born with something, no matter what it is, I don't think you appreciate it as much as you do if you live life and gain it. So we gain running water, and we gain air conditioning and televisions and radios and all that stuff, which we didn't have when we grew up. So we appreciate it more than maybe the next generation. They grew up and they had all that. Mm-hmm. So then they looking for something else.
How well do you recall the fire that started in your house when you were a child?
Not really. I think the first thing I really recall was that Mother took us out of the house and put us in a car. And I think we sat there, my brother and myself sat in a car and watched the house burn down.
Literally burned down.
I mean, it burned clean to the ground. Everything was wooden, and the only thing, I think I was in the second grade. The only thing I was worried about, and I don't know why, was my school books was getting burned up, and I thought I'd be in trouble because I'd destroyed my books.
How did that end up affecting the quality of life? You know, when the house gets burned to the ground, all the belongings in it are gone.
The house got burnt down.
You don't have fire insurance.
And then and this was during the war, during the Second World War, and so we moved back with grandmother and granddaddy, and at that time, everything was rationed because of the war, and the only way we was able to build a house was you lost a house. So my dad he got I think it was 20 foot by 8 foot construction trailer, wooden job with a round roof and all that stuff. So he put that up on cement blocks, and he went out front and made about a 10 by 20 cement floor, and then he built a house around that. And again, there was no running water in the thing. There was no indoor plumbing, naturally, no telephones, nothing. But then we moved out of grandmother and granddaddy's house back over to there, and this was somewhere in 43 or 44.
That house that he built, tell about that one bedroom that you and your entire family lived in.
You got to figure that, I'm talking about a, 10 by 20 operation, and so I think they took 8 foot and made a bedroom out of it, 8 by 10, whatever. And my mother and dad's bed went wall to wall, and then we went to the Army surplus when we had it. My brother and myself slept in. He was on the bottom deck and I was on the top deck, and there was probably a foot and a half between the beds. And they went, and like I say, the head and the foot went head to head, and that was all that was in that room. You went in, you went to bed. I mean, you couldn't even stand up in it. So then when we moved back over to grandmother and granddaddy's house, we had a big room. We'd died and gone to heaven again. We were just floating along. So it made us appreciate the next step in our life.
How well do you remember your first wagon race, and what did you do when you lost?
No, I don't know. That was just one of the deals where you just grew up. That was part of your childhood. We had a wagon.
You're like greasing the wheels.
It didn't last too long because we took the wheels off of it and made it. We thought it was a racer. We had a long 2x4, and then we made short 2x4s and put a wheel on each end of that. And then we nailed it to the 2x4, and the front one had one nail so you could just set on the 2x4 and hold on and guide it with your wheels, and we'd race down the hills and stuff.
What's the scar that you have on the back of your head, and then I think your brother has one in between his eyes?
That was some of the little fights and stuff we had as we grew up. Like I said, we lived in the house and stuff, lived on a dirt road, and then we had a driveway, and the driveway would keep getting big holes in it. So when we was cleaning up the yard, my dad would make us go out and pick up rocks. Well, that worked good for maybe half hour, then we'd get in an argument and throw rocks at each other. And then one day I wound up, I guess was working on a wagon or something, and my brother had the axle with a wheel on the end of it, hit me in the back of the head, and all that stuff. I think I'd throw the rock and hit him between the eyes, and when that happened, the one that caused the trouble didn't get a whipping. Both of you got a whipping. I mean, because it took two to cause the trouble, and mother and dad never asked you who started this or what the deal was. You both got a pretty good whipping on it.
Why do you think being a professional race car driver never even entered your mind as a kid?
Well, there wasn't no racing going on when I was up until I was, like 11, 12 years old. And
but even then, you didn't want to be a race car driver. You wanted to be a mechanic.
well, I never thought about the driving part because I was still 10 years behind driving the thing. The deal was just the mechanical part. It just fascinated me that we could work on something, make it better, make it faster, safer, whatever it was. And so my dad was doing the job. He was winning races, winning championships. We didn't need another driver. We just needed the mechanics. My brother and myself, my cousin, work on the car to make sure Daddy could go win the race. So that was our main surprise. I probably was 17, 18 years old before I even thought about driving a car.
And why did you all of a sudden think about it around then?
Well, I think I grew up with Buddy Baker and Buck Baker. Buck Baker was driving against my dad. Buddy Baker was my age. And I think his dad had let him start it when he was 18 or 19. And I asked my dad, I said, why can't I start? He said, you'll learn a lot between 18 and 21 years old. He said, you'll grow up. And so being he was the boss man, or I just followed his food, you never thought about when you got to be 19 or 20 coming back and say, come on, can we do it? But the day I got 21, I walked in and said, okay, I'm ready to try this deal. And he said, there's a car over in the corner, get it ready and go. So that's where my racing career started. I'm the driving part of it.
Your father, Lee Petty, obviously the legend, and you, even as a child, took on a lot of responsibilities with his cars. His career was really taking off. Talk about your involvement in the race team early on.
That was a family business, and my mother kept the books and kept everything straight. My brother and myself, and a couple cousins and stuff, we worked on the car because it was our livelihood. The guys next door was milking cows and plowing fields or working in the back of, like I say, we were working on race cars. So to make ends meet, or so that you had something to eat and a roof over your head, you just did what your parents told you to do, and you never questioned it. And I never thought about being in any other profession or doing anything else because my environment was racing. And I grew up in that environment and didn't look to get out of that environment. I don't know if I enjoyed it or it was just pushed on you so much, you just never thought about doing anything else.
How did you work around the NASCAR rule that was implemented, suddenly preventing kids from being around the pits? You got creative.
Well, the big deal was that when it first started, you had to be 21 years old to be in the pit.
And you're how old at the time?
Well, we was like
early teens?
12, 13 years old, 14 years old. That they had a situation, and they didn't have that many officials to check things, and everything was just a lot freer and open. And
except Bill France, who's running NASCAR now, only a couple years older than you, is like running all around trying to.
But NASCAR had a system. Every race you got to, then the pit crew or my dad would go in and sign in, and they'd give him a little card, and they called a pit pass. And they probably had 4 or 5 different colors. So my dad would get a pit pass, and we had a cigar box in the glove box. And when he got through with the pit pass, he'd put it in there. He kept putting them in there. And after a period of time, we had all the colors. We'd have 2 or 3 red ones, 2 or 3 blue ones, 2 or 3 green ones. So when we get to the racetrack, my dad would go get signed in. He'd come back with a yellow pit pass. We'd open the glove box and we'd give everybody a yellow pit pass because they never checked the numbers or what the date was or any of that. You just showed them the yellow deal and just drove on in. And remember many a time you'd be working on a race car and you'd see one of the officials and stuff coming and you'd slide up under the car or get in the car or do something just to hide. You see him coming. And we've been run out of pits a bunch of times, but as they'd run us out and they'd come back in, we just fall them back in. So you learn to beat the system, okay?
How tough was once driving home your father's crashed race car with the missing windshield in the cold?
Yeah, this was about 1950 or somewhere. Was in Heidelberg, Pennsylvania, right out of Pittsburgh. And somewhere down the later part of the race, my dad had turned the car over. So we had to, I think we went to the junkyard and got a piece of A-frame or something to get the car running. And the front end was so far out of whack that it wouldn't follow. And back then we had a car, and we just towed the car flat behind it. And the car the front end wasn't right, so it kept pushing my dad's car around. So he put me in the car, and I was like maybe 13 years old or something. And the windshield had been knocked out of it and all that. And he said, look, you just hold the steering wheel straight. Don't worry about driving or nothing like that. And when I hold up my hand, you put on brakes. And so we drove that thing home. Got home sometime Monday morning. And you didn't think anything about it because you did what you had to do to get the job done, I guess.
Well, here's one I'd imagine you thought something about. How did you wind up on the roof of your dad's car, hanging on for dear life?
Well, that's like, I think 1954 was in High Point, North Carolina, a little half-mile dirt. And they'd run some of the race and stuff, and the track was real muddy to begin with, and there's a bunch of mud on the windshield. So and they really didn't have a pit area or a pit road. They just turned off the racetrack and went through the infield. And so my dad come in hollering about getting the mud off the windshield. So I jump up on the windshield, and I'm cleaning the windshield. And we have a caution car that go around and slow everybody down, and they run behind. So my dad looked in the mirror and seen the caution car coming, because if he'd have sat still, we'd have been a lap down. He just takes off. And I'm on the hood of the car. He runs around, comes back around, and then runs through the pits, and I jump off. By then, the windshield's clean, and here come the officials. They run me back in the infield. I hide from them. But anyhow, it's...
Did he know you were on the roof?
Well, I wasn't on the roof. I was on the hood.
You were on the hood, yeah.
Yeah, I was on the hood.
Okay, yeah.
You dang right I did, because when my dad said do something, you didn't question it. You went and done it, okay? And so he just said, hang on, and he just took off. But probably, used to, a long time ago, they had race cars and had driving mechanics. I didn't know I was going to be a riding mechanic with him.
Later on, when you both were actually racing in professional races together, why do you think he never eased up on you even a little bit?
He came through the Depression. It was a hardcore deal, and everything he accomplished was just through hard work. Had a lot of good breaks, don't get me wrong, but he worked for it, and he expected his boys to do the same thing. I think the first race that I was ever flagged the winner, he protested.
Right.
And
a famous story. Explain what's going on there.
It was Atlanta, Georgia. I think they ran a 150-mile race at Lakewood Speedway on the dirt, and it was real dusty and all that. And back then you'd run a while, and the cars would break down, and they'd work on them, and they'd go back out. So it was just sort of chaos. And so we run after 150 laps. And I was running a convertible at the time, and I ran a 57 Oldsmobile, and he had a 59 Plymouth. And this was 1959. And so when the race was over, they flagged me the winner. Okay, so we was on the racetrack, jumping up and down as kids, and thought we'd won a race. And somebody said, somebody's protested. And I said, golly, for what? Well, your dad's protested. Okay, he protested because he thought they had left him out of lap, or somehow they'd messed up on the scoring. So they went ahead and gave him the race. And now his explanation was, when you win a race, I want you to win a race. But if you don't, then I don't want anybody to give you nothing. But on the other hand, we didn't have sponsors for the race cars or any of that stuff, and we lived out of the purse. And in 1959, you got a bonus, a $500 bonus if you had a 1959 car. If I'd have won with a 57 car, we'd have been $500 less taking it home. That was he said that's the reason I done it. So
you wrote about this in your autobiography, which I read and really enjoyed. It was pretty frustrating for you, though, at the time, even though you might not have admitted it for a while.
Well, yeah, you think you done something, and I hadn't ever won a race up to the end. So naturally you're looking for your first race and stuff. And, but again, it was the times you accepted it, and you might have thought about it, but there wasn't nothing you could do about it because it was history, so you just went on down the road.
How did your dad get into moonshining?
I don't really know how he started, because this had to be back in the late 30s, early 40s. And my dad had a truck or two, and he hauled sand and bricks and done all the stuff. And I don't know, somewhere down the line he decided to haul a little liquor on the truck, I guess, And then he got him a car, and him and his brother they didn't manufacture. They would buy in one place, and they were sellers. They'd buy stuff, and then they would transport it to some place and sell it from that standpoint. So,
tell about going to the cemeteries with him.
That's when he would deliver. We didn't do too much of that, but I'd been with him when. What he would do, he'd go to town and go around all the speakeasies or whatever, and they'd get an order. Then maybe 10, 11 o'clock at night, he had some liquor pit in some different places. He'd go pick up some, and we just scoot in different places, go in an alley somewhere, and he'd open the door and just slide it out on the side of the road, or go to the graveyard and put it behind the deal. And then the next day, he would go collect. Then he'd get his money, and then he'd get another order. And that went on till basically racing got him out of the liquor business. He seen another way of making a living that he could do it and tell people what he was doing.
But the liquor business kind of indirectly started the racing
indirectly
business.
Because the idea was that we had a 37 Plymouth or something, but he had a straight 8 Buick motor with 2 carburetors and all that, so the car would run fast. So he was mechanical inclined and was racy. They used to race up and down the road for money. People would come from Atlanta or Daytona, and they'd find a stretch of road somewhere 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and they'd bet thousands of dollars just who could run the fastest, and they'd race each other. So he was a racer. Then all of a sudden he got to be able to do it legally, and they really jumped in there.
What would happen if they passed a cop in one of those late night races?
I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't. They never, from what I can pick up, they never got caught. Never got stopped.
They just keep going, right?
They'd keep on going. That's for dang sure. And the cops sure wasn't going to catch them. You know what I mean?
Right. How did you learn about NASCAR?
Well, NASCAR came along. I think it must have been organized in 47, 48. My dad hung out in a service station in Greensboro, and he read in the paper where NASCAR, Bill France, was going to have a stock car race in Charlotte, North Carolina. And the boys he hung out with had a 47, I think, Buick or something, and it run fast on the road. It was a pretty fast car. And somehow or other he talked the guys in and said, got a fast car, we'll take it over the race and win $1,500 or whatever it was. We'll win a race with it because I know this is a fast car. Well, not being a racer, never being on a racetrack, he really didn't know what he was getting into. And so speed wasn't everything, but he didn't know that. Anyhow, he goes over and runs about half the race, turns the car over. It's a 4-door car, tears all the doors off. And my brother and myself and mother we thumbed a ride home with my dad's brother, because we drove the race car to the racetrack and put it up on a lift at Texaco Station, and they took the muffler off of it, took the hubcaps off, greased the thing, changed the oil, got it all, got it race ready, right. Because it was strictly stock. And I think they taped up the headlights or something, and they put a number on the door and went to the racetrack. And so that was the official beginning of NASCAR Cup racing and the Petty connection.
How significant a moment was it the first time your dad went down to Daytona to watch a race?
You know, I guess went down in '48 or sometime. They had summer races down at Daytona, and we'd had I think Daddy had a '40 Plymouth coach, and we drove to Daytona, and my brother, myself, mother, and Daddy. And first time I'd ever seen the ocean. Probably never been out of Randolph County. Never been to the beach in the Carolinas or the mountains or nothing. We just was home people and we stayed there.
So you'd only been around your town and all of a sudden you're off in
all of a sudden we're going
Florida
to
on the beach.
Man, we big shots. Very few people out of Randolph County in 1948, 47 ever went out of Randolph County. You know, it was just a deal of live and let live. You just made a living and stayed where you was at and just done your own thing.
How would you describe what NASCAR was like then when everything was new, the rules were sort of still being figured out, there wasn't any history per se to fall back on?
Well, it was just a beginning. Okay, they planted a seed and all the people involved just kept cultivating the seed, I guess. And the tree kept growing, and you got what you got now.
Right.
That's the way I sort of explain it. It was open season. Nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew what was going to happen. The first thing we done when they were strictly stock cars, the first thing they did was break wheels. So NASCAR said, well, we can't have this. So they let you put a better wheel on the car. Then first thing you know, you break the hubs that hold the wheel. You got to put a bigger hub. Then you break the spindle, then they put a bigger spindle, and then you break, whatever it was. So over a period of time, the cars went from strictly stock that broke things, and every time you'd break something, you'd make a better product, okay? And today, everything's spatial made because stock stuff is just not good enough to run 200 mile an hour and not safe enough. So it was just a slow progress to get from one year to the next year to the next model, to being able to race more. When we first started racing, probably 2/3 of the deal was just being around at the end of the race. You didn't race nobody, you just went out and run. And if you finish the race, you're gonna finish pretty good. And then as time progressed, the racing got closer to people racing each other. Now it's all sprint racing. And people don't have trouble with the wheels falling off the car or the brakes not working, motor blowing up. It's a sprint race all the way. So it just took, 65 years to get where we're at.
For how long do you think you guys were racing cars that you literally normally drove on the street?
I started in '58, I guess, and it was still pretty stock car. We got one here somewhere, and it's modified stock, okay? Mm-hmm. He started with a stock body, stock chassis, stock motor. You build that again. We'd build up the wheels and the hubs and stuff, brakes and stuff to make it, and then it went from like 1960. Then from 60 to 70, they kind of turned into half race cars. We still used a stock body, but everything underneath the car and the motor and everything was different. And then in the 80s, we changed the bodies because the cars were coming through with real short hoods, 6-cylinder engines, front wheel drive. So NASCAR said, we can't have this. So they made a NASCAR body and NASCAR chassis so that they could have a V8 engine up front and wheels drive from the rear like a regular car is supposed to. So all that stuff has changed, and now they went to safety so much, like 5 or 6 years ago, that they got away from a stock-looking body. And in the last couple of years, they said, okay, we got the safety down a little bit better. We're still working on that, but then we're trying to make the bodies so that the cars look like a Ford or a Chevrolet or a Toyota, so that they're back to, see, this all started as stock car racing. Now it's turned into cup racing. Mm-hmm. It's built around a stock car, but nobody's called it stock car racing for a long time.
When, today, the professional drivers have multiple cars, a team of people. Back when you were first starting to race, what happened if you crashed the car you were racing?
You crashed the car, you took it home, you worked on it and fixed the thing, so you was real careful not to tear up no more than you had to. But again, we had one race car, and the driver most of the time took pretty good care of the thing as much as they could, because if we didn't finish the race, you didn't get paid, and if you tore it up, you didn't have enough money to fix it for the next week. So it was just a survival to begin with. Well, it still is as far as that's concerned, but it's a survival occupation. You got to survive. You got to be there when it's all over in order to get a good paycheck.
And I thought it was interesting. You wrote in your book that driving or racing was your hobby. Working on cars was actually your job.
See, that's what basically when I quit driving, retired or whatever in '92. The deal was, up to that time, like I say, you worked 6 days a week or 7 days, whatever it was. You made appearances for sponsors. You worked on the car. You drove the truck to the racetrack, helped unload it. You done all this stuff. And when you got in the car, it was the only time that I felt like I had a little bit of control of my destiny. Even at home where you got a wife and kids and, there's so much going on, you don't control, you think you're controlling stuff, but you don't control a whole lot. When I was in that car, I could run fast, I could stop, I could go, I could do something basically by myself, me and the vehicle. And so it was just a hobby deal, and I really, really enjoyed driving a race car, whether you won or not, and naturally you tried to win, but the big deal was, if there's a car in front of you, let's pass him. Even if you're 15 laps behind, he's 20 laps, or he's leading the race, don't make any difference. You got it. That was your challenge. You had to challenge every lap to do a little bit better than what you'd done the lap before. So again, I just love to drive a race car.
Well, and as you said, the last lap's where you make the money anyways.
Well, that's when it's all about. But you got to be smart enough or good enough or lucky enough to be in a position to do the last part of the race as far as payday. I mean, going out and leading a race and stuff, no big deal. That it looks good on TV or to your fans, or you feel good about it, but it don't pay anything. It pays when you see that checker flag.
When you were a kid, your dad was just starting to really get good at racing, and he lost the race, and you make some comment to him about, well, you still did pretty good, Dad.
That wasn't good enough.
How did his response to you impact you?
He knew that he had to win to make a living and do what the deal was. And he was kind of a hard-nosed deal. On that deal, he just believed in winning the deal. I know about 1966, 67, we had what's called a northern tour. And we'd go up north after Daytona and run Trenton and Islip, New York, and 2 or 3 places up there, and run 4 races. And so the last race we run was in Islip, New York on Saturday night. And so we jumped in the truck and come tearing home. We got home probably 11:30, 12 o'clock. My dad was eating dinner anyway. So we pull in, and I mean, we're pretty excited. We had 4 races. We won 3 of them and won second in the other one. So we thought we'd had a good day. He comes out on the back porch eating a piece of chicken. He said, "What happened?" I said, "What do you mean, what happened? Why'd you run second?" He didn't say, "You done great by winning 3. He wanted to know why he didn't win. So, but that was just his makeup, and that's what we lived with.
How did you handle that?
You just went along with it, because from the time I was this big till I'm this big, same thing. So you just learn to live with the circumstances.
Did that start to become your mindset too?
Probably.
Okay.
I've got a lot of that stubbornness in me. I think that's just me. What you see is what you get, and How it got there, I don't know, and I just accept it and going down the road.
Describe what it was like being in the driver's seat of a race car in your first professional race.
You know, I guess I'd been going to racing so long, and we go to Dale Inman, my crew chief for all those years, and another boy and myself take the race car to Columbia, South Carolina. They ran a convertible race. And so we pull in, unload just like we always done. The only thing that I done different was I got in the car. First time I'd ever been in a race car. I'd been in a race car when the tracks were muddy and stuff. Sometimes Dad let me go out and, you run 15 mile an hour because there's mud everywhere. But anyhow, as far as getting in the car, putting on a helmet, putting on a seatbelt, and going out and see how fast you run, that's the first time. And so I go out and I run around a little bit, and we need to work on, make a change, like setting the car up like I knew what was going on. But yeah, I think we made a change. I don't know what we done, but yeah, go back out. So we ran the race, and I think I qualified 13th and wound up 6th in the race because I didn't outrun anybody. Everybody had trouble, and I wound up. And so coming back up the road was just come into North Carolina digging along there, and I reached over. I think I was driving a truck. Told Dale, I said, I think I'm gonna like this driving. And I just, it was.
What about it made you feel that way?
It was just a natural for me. I mean, it was again a hobby that I wanted to do, and I'd done it, and had a bunch of good people around me to give me a good, safe car, keep me from getting hurt too bad. So other than that, it was okay.
You said racing is unlike golf in that golf, the technique's very set, whereas racing, it's kind of an open field. So what was it like for you kind of figuring out what your technique was going to be on the racetrack?
There's so many different circumstances with racing. And I'm not a golfer. My dad used to golf a lot. But, you got a ball and a deal, and there's a hole. There's nobody in your way. They make everybody be quiet. So you're in pretty much control, unless the wind blows or something, but you got to figure on that. When you get in a race car, you got the race car with all the mechanical part, your driving ability, and then you got 40 other cars out there that you got to beat. You're not out there by yourself. You're not doing your job by yourself. You got to watch beside you, in front of you, behind you, and change with the circumstances as the track gets slicker or weather gets colder or hotter. So there's so many facets that you just sort of have to just go with the flow, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
How important is attitude?
My attitude's all. In other words, or confidence, whatever it is, that, if he can do it, I can do it and do a little bit better. I can work on my car, I can get my car a little better, I can go in that corner a little bit deeper, I can get on the accelerator quicker, I can make decisions quicker, I can beat any one given person. But again, when you go at it, you're not just beating one, you got all them other guys you got to beat too. But most of the time, it's like every other thing. It just comes down to, it's like cream raises the top. When you get down to really into the racing, there's just 4 or 5 people that you really got to beat. The rest of the people, you outrun them, but you don't really race with them.
What makes a successful driver?
Don't have an idea.
Oh, come on.
Don't have a clue.
Okay, well, how about this then? If 2 drivers have the same ability, what are the differences? What's the difference maker?
Okay, all of us have different personalities. All of us, as a drivers, have different personalities. They've got different scales of talent. Some guy might can see a little bit better than the other one, but the other one's got quicker reflexes. So there's no one given thing. It's just a bunch of different facets that I see that puts into the driver part. Then from the driver's standpoint, he's got to have the equipment to be able for him to use his talent. If he's got an inferior car, then a lot of times he can't use all his talent. He's got to have a car that's capable of accepting the talent that he has, okay? And so he has to be good enough. Sometimes the cars are better than the drivers, sometimes the drivers are better than the cars. The deal is getting the combination of a guy when he's really, really sharp from the driving deal, and the car is really, really sharp. And if you look back through the history of all the race car drivers, it's sort of like quarterbacks or whatever. They truck along and they get a little bit better and they have a really good year or a couple of years, and then it's kind of level out, and then they kind of start downhill. And it comes on slow, so a lot of times you don't see the trend. So, but you get people coming along, and most of the time, a really good driver maybe have 2 or 3 really good years. He might have a good year coming in, a good year going out, but really the highlight of his career, even if he wins, say, like Jimmy Johnson won 5 championships, okay, did he win it going in or did he win it coming out? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Took him a while to win one, and he hadn't won one in a while. So all that just came together with him and his equipment and his crews. And I guess I go a lot with fate. My dad always told me, he said, you can work hard, you can overcome anything in the world except fate. You have no control over fate. So when things come along, you take advantage of those and call it fate. I was lucky enough to be in the right place to win this race with the right people. So you didn't have anything to do with it. You done all you could do. And then fate come in and said, okay, it's your turn.
Right.
And that's the way we look at it.
And it's interesting you bring that up, because obviously age plays a big part in that, in terms of, an athlete might have more and more experience as they get older, but at some point their body just won't allow them to do the things they once did. I think your best year, after the 10 years after your best year, you won something like 105 races. And to put this into context, the 200 races you won is almost double the driver who's won the next most races. So I wonder, though, what's it like, or what was it like for you as a driver to one day realize you're never going to be as good as you were yesterday?
It's hard to take, okay? I mean, I'm going to tell you, this is the way I see athletes. The majority of the time, when an athlete retires or quits, he is the smartest, the best he's ever been, okay? Because he's got more experience and all that. The deal with the athletes, and the deal with, I'm using myself sort of as an example too, but I watch other people, is that when that athlete started golfing, started driving a race car, playing quarterback, he had on blinders. All he could see was, this is my job. This is what I want to do. Bam, bam, bam. So he concentrated 24 hours a day. Okay, then the first thing you know, he gets married. Then he gets kids. And then he gets to thinking, I can't always do this. I better get me an investment deal. I need to do this. And then the first thing you know, you get to spend 10 hours a day on your job. And then as you get business stuff, first thing you know, your concentration is on your job just when you're at your job. It ain't on 24 hours a day. So you lose your focus, but you're still the smartest, the best you've ever been, just because of the experience.
How did you reconcile that for you personally, with the desire to still be as great as you could be at your job?
I guess I knew that's the way the game was played, that's the way the game's laid out. I just do the best I can to get the most out of it for me and my family. And we won our 200th race in '84. And if you look at our record and look at the way it was going, we was winning, and then was already sort of working our way downhill, even though we was still winning races and stuff like that. And then after that, I told him a lot of times, I think the good Lord give me, 25 years of good luck, and I try to stretch it to 30.
The injuries, The tolerance you had for pain must have been extraordinary, but how do you view physical pain?
See, the strongest thing a person has is his mind. So if he uses mind over matter, I'm a big believer in, I can sit here and make my finger hurt just by my mind, or I can make it not hurt. Okay? And it's a mindset deal. But one of the mindset deals were that when we was coming along, we had Petty Enterprises here, had a race car, had a bunch of people working for us. I was responsible for that race car and those people to get paid, make a living. No matter how bad you was hurt, your job was to get in that race car and do the best you could with it. So between the obligations you had to you and your family and the people that you worked with and your mind, you just went and done it. You didn't think anything about it. If you had a broke leg, you got in the car. If your ribs were broke, you got in the car. If your neck was broke, you got in the car. Shoulder broke, they taped the dang thing up and put you in the car and you went. And you never thought about not doing it because that was your job.
And you wouldn't even take pain or numbing medication. I mean, you can go to the dentist for a cavity and have them drilling on your mouth and you aren't taking any medication. So you do take it to an extreme, but how about...
That's just teaching my mind, okay?
And how do you teach? I mean, have you always been able to do that?
Yeah, I guess for some reason, I don't know. It's again, I'm a real strong believer in mind over matter, and that's what it all is. So from that standpoint, I guess I learned from an early age, and when you got an obligation to do, you haven't got time to be sick or you haven't got time to hurt. You got to go do the job.
The worst rib injury you ever drove with would be what?
Well, just when they tear all your ribs loose and when the whole thing comes loose. There's nothing that I've ever had hurt me as much as having broke ribs, because if you breathe, they hurt. If you laugh, they kill you. And you'll be sitting here and they hurt a little bit, and every time you move, they hurt more. And I get, to me, that's the worst pain I've ever had, trying to wait for them to get healed back up or kind of hook up.
How was it to drive with?
It was tough. I broke them so many times, we finally just took a piece of aluminum and went from here around to here and just bent the thing, just where it fit the ribs, and then we put foam rubber on the inside of that. And then when I get in the car, they put that on and then just tape the thing up so that when I went in the corner, you had something in the seat to keep you from falling out of the seat. And so what happened when you did that, it spread it over a big it spread it from the top of your arm, bottom of your arm to your hip, then it didn't really push on your ribs.
Okay.
So you was able to do that without suffering too much.
It lessened some of the pain as best it could.
Again, might take a Goodies or a shot of Novocaine, but they wouldn't last very long, so you just had to go on.
Explain why you had half of your stomach removed.
Well, I had ulcers, okay, and I think that probably started at a younger age. When I first started racing around or running around working on race cars, we never, in our racing business, it was a 24-hour business. You didn't go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, quit at 12 and eat dinner, quit at 6 and eat supper, and then go home. It didn't work that way. You went and had a job to do, and you worked at it. And when we go on a trip, if we went from here to California, the only time we stopped was when the car ran out of gas or the truck ran out of gas. And you'd stop, and if there was a place to eat, you eat, and if they didn't, you'd grab a Coke and a pack of nabs and go on down the road. So we never did anything regular. And by being up 24 hours a day or 36 hours a day or whatever it was, you just went and done it, and you didn't really take care of eating the right stuff or whatever. You just, whatever it was, you grabbed it and ate it and went on down the road. And so it finally just, that plus probably the tension, you know, the grind, and just being gone and worrying about stuff or whatever, just finally just eat up half my stomach. So finally had to take it out.
Explain the situation in which you broke your neck.
We was Pocono, Pennsylvania in 1980, I think, somewhere right along there. I'm going in to turn and the wheel breaks, and I run up on the guardrail and the catch fence and turn the car over and just tear it all to pieces. And Dale Inman, the crew chief, he runs down there and wants to know what's going on. I said, I think I broke my neck, but don't know. Okay, so they take me over to...
You said it casually like that?
Yeah, you just said, you know, my neck's hurting, I think I broke it. I said, okay. So they lay me down, they take me to the little hospital down somewhere there in Pennsylvania. And so I'm laying there and my wife's there and we sort of waiting on the doctor to come in. He comes in with his x-ray and he's looking at the lights and looking at it, and he said, when did you have your neck broke before? I said, I didn't know I had it broke before. And he showed the x-ray where it moved over about 1/8 of an inch, one of the vertebrae or something had a crack in it and had calcium around it. And I said, well, probably broke it sometime when I broke something else and it hurt worse. See, your body can only hurt one place at a time. So, you know, then we went from there to Talladega the next week and had a doctor up there in Pennsylvania. He made me a special brace for my neck. And so we went down and I think we qualified the car and started the race, and then I got out of the car and put another boy in it. But that's what we done.
How
that
dangerous
was
racing?
Oh God, I ain't telling how dangerous it was. If anything had happened, his head had probably fell off, you know. But again, that was my assignment, and that was what I was supposed to do. And you know, NASCAR's a little bit stronger on their safety deals than what they used to be. They wouldn't even let you at the racetrack if you got a broken neck now. But I mean, you know, we drove with concussions.
How many concussions do you think you've had?
You know, yeah, there's no telling. See, every time you hit your head, you got some kind of concussion. So you can imagine with all the stuff we had, he probably had 8 or 10 that was pretty strong deals. We had one in Daytona one year, was running a high rock race, coming off second corner, a bunch of people crashed. And so when we do that, then they put you in the ambulance and they take you and check you all out. And so I get in the ambulance, or so they tell me. I get in the ambulance with 2 or 3 other guys were sitting there. And they said, I asked them, did anybody get hurt in the wreck? And they said, no, nobody got hurt. So didn't think nothing about it. I go to the infirmary and lay there, and about a half hour after that, I wake up. I don't remember any of that stuff.
Wow.
But I was talking to them. Everybody thought everything was okay, but it rung my bell so much that I was just unconsciously conscious. I don't know what you'd say. And then all of a sudden you woke up, and you know, that was a big deal. And then they took me to the hospital, kept me overnight because they knew didn't know how bad the concussion was. And then they, I think it was on a Friday, and we run the race on Sunday. And they wasn't wanting to let me out of the hospital because they didn't know how bad it was. And definitely wasn't wanting me in a race car, but you know, you just go do it. And you got back in the race car, and we led the race till we blew the tires. So it was just one of those deals that we just done what you had to do.
You think you have any lasting side effects from the concussions?
I told the guys, I said, probably I'm walking around now with a concussion and don't even know it. Had so many, so I don't know how it'd be if you didn't have a concussion. But yeah, you know it's got a beat on your head and slow down something. So I don't know if Alzheimer's or something like that, if that would have a startup deal on that. I don't know. So far, I can remember to get up and eat and go to bed, so I'm okay.
Drag race, Georgia, you know, you crash, and the crash injures spectators, kills an 8-year-old. All these years later, how vividly do you still remember that day?
You know, that was in 1965. we was running a drag race somewhere in Georgia. And we get off the line, the car breaks A-frame or something, and he goes off and kills a little kid that's alongside the track. And it took me a long time to get over that, because I had a couple of kids, had 3 kids at the time, you know what I mean, and I wasn't that old either. It was just one of the deals that you say, why? You know, why me? Why did it all happen? But, you know, when stuff like that happens, you learn from it, but you can't live with it. You have to say, that was history. I can't go back. I can't change any of that. It is what it is. And so you learn to accept it. Then, you know, later on, I think in 1975, my wife's brother was killed in the pits at Talladega. And we had a tank, and the tank blew up. I had a pressure tank, water tank, and the deal blew up. And then in 2000, we lost grandson, Adam Petty, in New Hampshire. So you started out, the kid in Georgia I didn't know, okay, but then I knew my brother-in-law, and then all of a sudden it's my grandson. So it came closer and closer, but all of them sort of fit into a pattern of, there were tragedies, we were there, we were involved, but we really didn't have anything to do with it. It just, again, it was a fate deal that happened. And, you know, the deal with, at least with Adam, then we were able to get together and go back and build the Victory Junction Gang Camp for chronically and seriously ill kids 10 years ago or something. It's been going on. So, you know, out of tragedy for one or for a family or a few families, all the other, you know, 22,000 kids that's come through there, it's been a blessing for them. So you look back and say, we lost one deal, but look at all the good things that come out of that. So that's how I balance life.
There was a letter that a fan wrote to you after the death of your grandson, Adam, passed away.
Yeah, some lady sent a letter, and this was right after I lost my grandson. And, you know, it was kind of a deal that, you know, you question yourself. And I mean, it really hit hard, because I said, if I hadn't been in racing, then Adam probably wouldn't have been in a race car, and he probably wouldn't have got killed in a race. The letter said, you know, don't put a question mark where God's put a period. And it was just like, it took away the world off it. I mean, I've never had that many occasions to feel relief, I guess was what it was. It was just a deal, hey, you're not responsible. Again, it just happened. And it just like I say, just like took a weight off of me, and then I could go on and help with the Victory Junction Gang, do my business like I was supposed to. But for a couple of weeks there, I was pretty down.
How long did it take you to get through it?
Well, just like I say, a couple of weeks. It was just, I didn't eat right. I was just out of the world. Mm-hmm. And like I say, once I got that note, I said, she's right. This is the real world, guys. You got to get out there and go. And then you're still not over it, okay? But it gets to be less and less of a point in your life as time progresses.
And I'd imagine it helps having a great family and a strong support system.
You know, the family's what it's all about. Right. You know, we just got a great grandson, whatever, and they named him Adam. You know, we call him Stone because the family's hard. It's hard to grow up with Adam and then call another person Adam in the same family. So we just call him, I think they named him Stonewall, we call him Stone. So, and he's a Petty, so he'll be okay.
How much credit do you give to your late wife for all the success that you had during your career? You know,
it's a funny thing. I think we got married when she was 17, had 2 kids by the time she was 19, at 21, 22 years old. And the deal being, she was young, I was young. We'd never been in that part of our life. And just growing up, not knowing what you're supposed to do, what you wasn't supposed to do. And the situation wound up was she was the homebody. She took care of the house. She took care of the bills. She took all of that kind of deal. I went out and done my racing and did my job. And then it was like, I tell people, it was like 3 lives. She lived a life, I lived a life, and we lived a life together. So we were married 55 years. We probably lived together 25, which was okay, because I'd come home, stay 2 or 3 days, and couldn't wait to get away, and be away 2 or 3 days and couldn't wait to get back home. So it was a perfect situation for my situation. That might not work for anybody else, but it worked for us.
I was talking to your daughter Rebecca about this last night, and she was saying, in a way, it was kind of tough for your mom because on one hand, she wants to be the wife and be with you on the race weekends, all the time. Yet on the other hand, she knew she needed to be at home and be the mother. How difficult do you think that was for her?
Again, we started this real young, and we had no guidance of what was right or wrong or what we needed to do or when we needed to do it. And we just let it develop. In other words, when the situation was this way, we're going this way or this way. I guess we was young enough to know that life was out there. We didn't understand it. And whatever thrown at us, we just take it and make the best out of it. And she done a heck of a good job with that.
And you figured out what worked best for you guys.
For the whole family.
I read this, and this cannot be true. When you guys were going on your early dates and you were courting her, were you really picking her up in a car that didn't even have a passenger seat?
Yes. What do you mean? Had a 56 Dodge. I had it all lowered, big wheels and tires. Had a 57 Oldsmobile motor with 3 carburetors and no mufflers and all that. And so, they come with bench seats. I got the idea I didn't want the bench seat. I went on some kind of truck or something that had a bucket seat, so I put the bucket seat in the thing. So I drove around, and I took a big rug and stuff and laid in the floorboard, so the floorboard wasn't that rough. And when I'd go pick her up, I'd take a wheel and just put a wheel over there and put a cushion on the thing, and we'd ride around and go to the drive-in or go to the ball game or whatever. And she'd have to hang on because it wasn't too stable. But that's the truth. We did do that.
What's her reaction the first time she gets in the car and sees that?
She was young and innocent, and it didn't make any difference. If I'd have come with a wagon, she'd have been happy just to go out. So she didn't know any better.
Did you really give her $100 for a wedding present?
Yeah, that we did. We went to South Carolina, got married when she was 17. She had to be 18 in North Carolina. Anyhow, and I said, okay, I'll give you a wedding present. And she had bought some pots and pans and paying $5 a month on them or some kind of deal. So I said, I'll give you so I give her $100. And she went and paid off the pots and pans. I said, now this is a very conservative lady. This is going to be great. So we still got some of the pots and pans, and that was 56 years ago.
What would you say is the most satisfying moment from your career? I can't come with any one given thing. Been so fortunate over the years of different situations that when it happened, that's the greatest thing that ever happened. Then you get something else that happens, this is the greatest thing. I mean, when Kyle was born, that was the biggest thing that ever happened to me. I had a son, Then I had a daughter. Then I had another daughter. Then I had another daughter. Then I had granddaughters and grandsons, and I've won races, won big races, won championships, meet the presidents of the United States, go around the world, go to Australia, go to China,
all those things were big things in my life, but they're just part of my life. There's no one given thing. The best thing that probably ever happened, well, there's a bunch of things that make it all work, was meeting my wife and getting married, doing the thing when I did when I was young. Because I think we dated for a year and a half and stuff, and I told her, I said, you know, racing's number one in my life. If you work really, really hard, you might be number two, okay? But
you said that too.
After 55 years, she become number one, okay? That was the seed that made everything else you see work. But that seed had to get a good foundation, and then a big old tree grew from that.
The 1967 Southern 500, why might that be the most important race of your career?
67?
Uh-huh. You said in your book that you thought that might
well,
be
really, okay, you got to figure along up until 1959, Darlington was the biggest race, okay? And then Daytona came along. But it took 5 or 6 years for Daytona to outshine Darlington. And everybody that's ever drove Darlington will tell you that it's probably one of the roughest, toughest, hardest racetracks to drive and to win races. You know, I think Pearson's won 8 or 10 races there. He just got the knack of it, had good fortune. We never won but 3 races, I think, there. But my dad had tried from 1949, and I'd tried, and we just was always that close, but never got there. So to win a race on what I consider the toughest racetrack, it was just a big accomplishment. And you know, I think Daytona's finally overcome Darlington, but like I say, up to that time, that was the crown jewel of NASCAR.
How about the time you crashed and you thought you might get eaten by alligators?
Yeah, it was in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and we was running a dirt track, and I went up the back stretch and the accelerator hung, and when it did, the thing tumbled off, and they didn't have no fence, so you went out in the swamp. And so I was in a convertible, so I was up sitting on the seat waiting for the wrecker to come, and it was up on the bank. And I said, come on down here and get my car. And he said, we ain't coming down there. I said, what do you mean? He said, there's alligators out there. So they threw the chain down, I hooked it to the roll bar, and they pulled me up. But you could hear them splashing around. I said, man, I'm gonna stay in the car. So it worked out.
What happened where you almost got stabbed at a racetrack once? I guess you got into a confrontation with some driver and his crew was coming up at your family, ended up beating him up.
I'm gonna have to do some research on that.
Yeah, you're gonna have to read your book again. So the Daytona 500, the one that took 3 days to determine who the actual winner was, what do you think was going on there?
You know, we didn't know, okay? We always look at conspiracy situation. Up in 1956, 57, the factories were involved. Ford, Chrysler, GM had race cars. When they pulled all their race cars out, they decided that they weren't going to race anymore. And then in 1959, when they ran Daytona, then Bill France was still courting, trying to get the factories involved again. And my dad was in an Oldsmobile, and the guy that they flagged was in a Ford. And we always surmised that France thought that if Ford won the race, he might could get them back in racing more than Oldsmobile was never considered a hot rod per se. And anyhow, we thought about that deal. But then after after everything was done, and it took them to Wednesday to decide the deal. After everything was done, and you look back at history, one of the greatest PR deals that ever came about was that if we'd have run Daytona and it had been a winter, it would have been in the newspaper on Monday. Tuesday, we'd have never heard tell about it. The way it was, by having the controversy, it was in there Monday, it was in there Tuesday, it was in there Wednesday, it was in there for the next week, just trying to figure it all out. So all of a sudden, Daytona became a big racing place just because of the PR they was getting on a day-to-day basis.
And this isn't like today where there's all this high-tech stuff where instantly they can tell who won, or the viewer at home on quick replay can see who won. They had to go back, spend time developing a photo.
They had to look at photos, and I think in France's mind, he knew my dad had won the race.
Okay.
So I don't know what his PR part was, whether it was try to get factors back in, or whether he was smart enough to realize we can milk this thing as long as we can, and that's what they done.
What about your 200th victory made it so memorable for you?
Well, you know, again, my career was sort of going downhill. We hadn't won but one other race that year, and so we go to Daytona on July the 4th. President's flying in. He on the Air Force One. He says, "Gentlemen, start your engines." So we start the engine. About halfway through the race, he lands, and
President Reagan.
President Reagan. And we're not. That's the furthest thing from my mind, because we're out there racing, and it comes down to the end of the race, and Cale Yarborough and myself are racing, and the deal is I'm not thinking about 200. I'm not thinking about anything except how do we beat Cale. And so we come down the last lap, and I'm leading. He's running second. So I know what he's going to do. I mean, that's when cars drafted each other and they slingshot past. So I do everything I can to outwit him, which don't work. And I've got a plan. He's got a plan. And I slow him down a little bit for the last 8 or 10 laps. We just keep getting a little bit slower, and he still stays behind me, which I know, okay, we came around to get the 1 lap to go, or the white flag. There's a car down in the first corner. It's way up in there. Some guy runs off the track and turns the car over. So then we race back to the flag. Whoever got back to the flag the first was the winner. And so both of us then run wide open. We go down the backstretch, and right at the end of the backstretch, he pulls out and passes me. And when he does, he's running probably 10 or 15 mile an hour quicker than he's been running. So he turns the steering wheel, and he's in a different groove because the car goes in faster. So I'm able to duck down beside of it, and we come down to the start-finish line with. We got black marks on both sides of the car where we're touching each other, and I wind up beating him probably a couple of 3 feet. And so then when that's over with, they had then told us they'd stop at on the racetrack. Instead of going to the winner's circle, stock them on the racetrack. The president was up in a press box. So we go up and get to talk to the president in the press box. And then when we get through there, we take pictures and do the whole deal. And then when the race was over, they took the garage area and closed it off. And the drivers, their families, the crews and their families got to eat Kentucky Fried Chicken with the President of the United States on July the 4th on top of that. So it wound up being really a big day for us, I guess a big day for him. I always looked at it, he put us on the front page, we put him in the sports page. So it was a win-win for us all the way around.
You remember what you guys talked about?
Do what?
You remember what you guys talked about?
No, he was just all excited. He said, "Y'all running 200 mile an hour and beating on each other." I mean, I guess he'd never seen a race. He'd heard about them and all that. But when he first got there, the cars all over the racetrack. Who's leading what? Who's doing what? Because there was nothing to put it all together. And so they finally told him, well, this guy's first, this one's second, that guy over there's third. So he finally got the flow of it. But it was a fantastic finish at any time. But it was the 200th win for me in front of the President of the United States. So all rolled up to one. It was just another big fate deal. It was just supposed to be, and it happened to us.
Your last race was Jeff Gordon's first race, and he actually still has that souvenir money clip that you gave to all of the drivers who were competing in your last race. What do you think of Jeff Gordon?
Jeff's done a heck of a job. If you look back at NASCAR, you got different leaders at different times bringing the sport forward. Okay, and to begin with, there was an era. Then I came through with an era with Pearson and Allisons and Bakers and Yarboroughs. Then it kind of shifted over to Darrell Waltrip and then to Dale Earnhardt, and then it shifted to Jeff Gordon. He took it from one level to another level, and all these people took it to another level. And he's been a heck of a spokesman for the deal, being able to be a young guy. He wasn't from Carolina. He's from California, Pennsylvania, or Indiana, somewhere. And he was the first really young guy to come in, because most of the guys had went through the process of doing the NASCAR sportsman, and they were always 25, 26 years old before they got a first class ride. He come in, he gets a first class ride at 20 years old, 21 years old. And so he starts a new trend of younger people coming into the sport. And in doing that, then the face of NASCAR, he changed it from one face to another face, where I was there when it was changed from the old guard, from the original stuff, sort of into the start of the modern era. Then you had the Earnhardts and Waltrips come along and take it again to another level. And he's now taking it to another level. And that level now is being taken to another level with another crowd of people. And so, again, he's been a really, really big asset to be able to be as personable, to be on late night TV or early morning TV, talked about anybody to anything, about all different kinds of subjects, and still be a heck of a race car driver.
Danica, Patrick, I know your favorite topic to talk about. You made the comment that the only way she could win is if nobody else was in the field. To what extent were you surprised by all the attention that received?
No, the whole deal was a PR deal. If her name had been Joe Smith,
sure,
nobody would even know she ever showed up at a racetrack.
Right.
So it was strictly, and I can't blame her. And she is competitive now. She really does try. I got to give her all that kind of credit. But she was able to have enough talent to draw a little bit of attention, her sponsor-wise, and then they took it and made something work for her. And she's been good for racing from the standpoint of the PR part, not from the competitive standpoint, but from the PR standpoint. She's got a lot of press, which we as far as NASCAR Cup probably wouldn't have got. And I mean, she almost carried IndyCar racing there for a year or two because they didn't have nothing else going. Well, we had other things going, but she come in and went right to the front on the PR deal. And as you see, it was blown out really 2 years ago. Last year wasn't as much. This year you got to sort of look through the pages to find out if she's even there. So,
right. Could you ever envision a time where there are more female drivers in racing? Not
really. It's it's one of the deals where it's a male sport, okay? And the only way it's going to be a female sport if it's an all-female sport. So like ladies playing basketball, and then you got the pro guys playing they don't mingle deal. The girls are good against girls, and the boys are good against boys, okay? Even in golfing or whatever. Women are better at some things than men. Men are better at some things than ladies. So as long as right now I don't see it ever coming to a deal of being the leaders of our sport being ladies. I don't see it works that way.
Right. Who's your favorite driver to watch?
You know, I don't know that I've ever had a favorite driver beside my dad. You know what I mean?
What about today? I mean, when you watch the races
today, I watch my cars.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I watch Eric Amarillo and Sam Hornish. You know, I watch the other cars, but 2/3 of the deal is where are they at? What are they doing against each other and against other competition? Mm-hmm. So as far as going and saying, okay, I'm going to watch Jeff Gordon, I'm going to watch Jimmy Johnson and pull for them or whatever, you know, I don't do that. You know, and I don't know that I've ever watched any one driver and just watched him for a race just to see what he's accomplished. I watch him at different segments of the race, and then I make an opinion of, hey, this guy knows what he's doing, or he doesn't know what he's doing.
What would you say is the biggest change that you've noticed in NASCAR over your lifetime in the sport?
Technology has been the biggest change. Where we used to work here, and everything we did was off of experience and seedy britches. Over a period of time, we got engineers, we got computers. NASCAR's tightened up the rules. Everything's got to be. Used to we measured everything in inches. Now they measure in thousands, and that changes the whole philosophy of what we can accomplish. And so, if the biggest one deal, you know, I'm like Kyle Petty. He says the only thing about racing today is what it used to be when it started, is they throw the green flag when the race starts and they throw a checker when it's over. Everything else is different. And my biggest deal is the money come into it, technology come into it, and it's more of a sport. It's more of a show now than it used to be. It used to be a race. Nobody worried about showtime, you know, being correct English or doing anything. Then it got to come with the TV and with all the publicity. We're in the show business, even though we as Richard Petty Motorsports wants to be in the racing business. Okay, so we in the racing business putting on a show.
Your daughter says she most misses the family atmosphere that existed earlier on in the sport, you know, when there wasn't the money, when the drivers weren't flying in and out on their private jets, when they're actually, you know, everybody was together more.
No, you know, I mean, you'd go to the race and all the drivers' wives or girlfriends, they all parked in the infield. They didn't have a special place for them. Then over a period of time, they finally put them in a place. Then as generations change, they don't start with where the generation before started. They start where the generation before ended up. So they go each step. And they didn't have to sleep in the back of the truck to get to California. They fly in a private jet. When they get there, they got either a big motel room or they got their own bus. They don't have to associate with the general public if they don't want to. So, you know, that part's changed just because the sport has changed. And to me, it's grown up. And there's nothing the matter with it. It's just so much different. And the Jeff Gordons didn't go through what I went through. I didn't go through what the Lee Pettys went through. Okay, so each generation's made it easier for the next generation.
When you were starting out, you had to drive your own car to the racetrack. You had to basically fund the team yourself. What did that teach you about savings and working towards a goal?
Well, it was all about trying to make a living in the long run. And, your accomplishments sort of added up to the end. The better you was doing, the more money you had, to be able to go and get better cars, better people working on a car, get everything going better. So everything just sort of went hand in hand, and you just did it. You didn't think about it.
We had the NASCAR Hall of Fame on their Facebook page asked their fans to submit questions for you, and we wanted to pick out one of the questions to read for you, and it's Ian Spence asks, if you could go back in time to the very first race, Back to the Future style, what would be the one thing you would tell yourself to do differently?
Everybody asks, what if? If I'd have changed one thing back when I started, everything would be different today. Okay? So you look back and you say, I wished I'd have done this, or I wished I'd have done that. But then when it all washes out, would you be in the situation you're in today? So I go back and say, I wouldn't change anything, because any things I changed would have changed so much other things. I know I'm getting complicated here, but
no, I get it.
The deal of being able here to sit here and talk to you, be here at the museum, I've accomplished all this stuff with all the people that made it happen for me. I wouldn't want to change anything. I wouldn't want to change where I was born, who I was born with, who I married, my kids, because if I changed anything, it would change a lot of people's lives, not just mine. If I could change something and it just changed my life, I might look at changing it. But other than that, no. Just leave everything alone. Fate's been real good. Let's don't challenge fate.
This has been a real treat. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir, buddy. Thank you, man.